Hello everybody, it's Vertical Sandwich. Welcome back to Book Reviews. So, this is my right side, this is my left side. So today, we're going to be doing the first Hugo Award winner. Here it is, let's look. Boom, right there. Alfred Bester's The Demolished Man. Now, Alfred Bester was Bester is best known. He wrote two novels that are kind of considered classics in science fiction. Clearly very early science fiction, because this is the first Hugo Award. The Demolished Man is one, and The Star's My Destination is another. And I've read and owned The Star's My Destination, so we'll be doing it later. It doesn't really qualify as a Hugo Award, but because it is kind of a classic of science fiction, we'll be dealing with it. So, this won the Hugo Award in 1953. 1953. So, yeah, my father, if he were still alive today, would have been 10 when this was published. Alright, so let's read the back cover. In a world policed by telepaths, Ben Reich plans to commit a crime that hasn't been heard of in 70 years. Murder. That's the only option left for Reich, whose company is losing a 10-year death struggle with rival DeCourtney Enterprises. Terrorized in his dreams by the man with no face, and driven to the edge after DeCourtney refuses a merger offer, Reich murders his rival and bribes a high-ranking telepath to help him cover his tracks. But while police prefect Lincoln Powell knows Reich is guilty, his telepath's knowledge is a far cry from admissible evidence. So it's that. Now, let's just say something about this before we read it. So the premise of this book is actually a premise that has been used a lot, and when it's done well, almost instantly becomes a classic, which is a man being consumed by his, trying to commit the perfect crime and then being consumed by the crime. Crime and Punishment is a great example of this, as is The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. They're both, these clear examples of kind of... I think this has a lot more in common with Crime and Punishment than it does with kind of... The Telltale Heart has its stuff, right? This has more in common with Crime and Punishment because there's like a cop anti-hero kind of thing. Maybe the cop's the hero, I don't know. The cop is the antagonist, and the killer is the protagonist. It's not the same as hero and villain. Protagonist, antagonist. Protagonist drives the plot forward. Antagonist is the thrower of obstacles. Whereas, and it doesn't necessarily, have to even be main characters to the antagonist. There's a really great argument about who is the antagonist in the book Wuthering Heights. But we're getting off topic here because we're talking about The Demolished Man. So let's read a bit, and then I'll talk about my impressions of the book, which I've read pretty recently. The idea of a first-class Esper, a pillar of the guild, participating in murder was unthinkable. Yet, if actually the fact, a son of a bitch to prove. Nobody ever got anything from a first without full consent, and if Tate was incredible, impossible, 100 to 1 against, working with Reich himself might prove impregnable. Resolving on one last propaganda attack before he was forced to resort to police work, Powell turned towards the group. He caught their eyes and directed a quick command to the peepers. Joe, Gus, jet off. I want to say something to Reich. I don't want you to hear. I won't peep him or record his words. That's a pledge. Fourth Main and Tate nodded, muttered to Reich, and quietly departed. Reich watched them go with curious eyes and then looked at Powell. Scare 'em off, he inquired. Warned them off. Sit down, Reich. They sat on the edge of the basin, looking at each other in a friendly silence. No, Powell said after a pause. I'm not peeping you. Didn't think you were, but you did in Maria's study, eh? Felt that. No, guessed. That's what I would have done. Neither of us is very trustworthy, eh? Reich said emphatically. We don't play girls' rules. We play for keeps, both of us. It's the cowards and weaklings and sore losers who hide behind rules and fair play. What about honor and ethics? We've got honor in us, but it's our own code, not the make-believe rules some frightened little man wrote for the rest of the frightened little men. Every man's got his own honor and ethics, and so long as he sticks to them, who's anybody else to point the finger? You may not like his ethics, but you've no right to call him unethical. Powell shook his head sadly. You're two men, Reich. One of them's fine, and the other's rotten. If you were all killer, it wouldn't be so bad. But there's half louse and half saint in you, and that makes it worse. I knew it was going to be bad when you winked, Reich grinned. You're tricky, Powell. You really scare me. I can never tell when the punch is coming and which way to duck. Then for God's sake, stop ducking and get it over with, Powell said. His voice burned, his eyes burned. Once again, he terrified Reich with his intensity. I'm going to lick you on this one. Then I'm going to strangle the lousy killer in you because I admire the saint. This is the beginning of the end for you. You know it. Why don't you make it easier for yourself? For an instant, Reich wavered on the verge of surrender. Then he mustered himself to meet the attack. And give up the best fight of my life? No, never in a million years. Like, we're going to slug this one straight down to the finish. Powell shrugged angrily. They both arose. Instinctively, their hands met in a four-way clasp of final farewell. I've lost a great partner in you, Reich said. I've lost a great man in yourself, Ben. Enemies? Enemies. It was the beginning of demolition. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't like The Stars My Destination. When we talk about it, I will say why. I actually like this. Is it a little dated? Not so much. For 1953, this holds up really well. But partially because it's kind of like this hard-boiled detective story, right? And hard-boiled detective stories are kind of timeless. Or if they are dated, you don't expect them to not be. Like, you just expect, tough cop in a world of tough cops. And there are some echoes and some later Philip K. Dick stuff from here. Like, you read this and you really feel kind of things like the Solar Lottery. Or Flow My Tears, the policeman said. You feel those novels in this. You can really, they have the same tone. I'm not saying Philip K. Dick copied Bester. What I'm saying is that, there's something about that kind of good police story tone. Like, almost every cop book you pick up kind of has to have it. The Yiddish Policeman's Union actually has it when you read it. It's a weird alternate history book, but it's still got that kind of dry, dead inside, like all business cop feel to it. And if you can't enjoy that, I don't know what to tell you. Now, the cop in here is like a telepath. And there are some things in here, and I'll see if I can find them. There's some like really crazy, where like the psychics are having a party, and they're, if you can see this, they're putting their thoughts into patterns on the page so that you have to read these weird acrostic poems. And there's something really brave about that from Bester, right? Like, this is the 50s. I mean, if you know anything about what was going on in poetry at the time, I mean, this is like Cummings level stuff. So, like, it's really weird for this to just kind of be a story that they're, like, arranging their thoughts in geometric patterns, and he's trying to put it on the page. Like, and there's names that have fractions in them and stuff like that. When I said four main, or fourth main, it's like 1/4 MAINE. Fourth main. Or a fourth main? I don't know. You have to make up yourself. I think there are people who have like ampersands in their name and stuff, and you're like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to. You just have to read it. I had a lot of fun with this, and it's the pace on this book is not bad. It's like 220 pages. You can go right through it. It's nice. I really liked all those qualities of it. Like, does it seem a little dated? I actually didn't think so. I thought it held up really well as a good piece of kind of foundational science fiction. And I enjoyed it, and I liked reading it. And, is it from the magazine era? Of course it is. It's from the 50s. Like, this probably published in something like Amazing Sci-Fi or something, or, like the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. Like, It could have been that. Like, I don't know. Yeah, and I mean, but I dug it. I really dug it. I liked it. I got into it. I liked the kind of cat and mouse game. I liked I liked Ben Reich kind of, the strain of the crime he had committed, trying to get away with it. And that stuff was really fun. And then the kind of telepathic stuff that goes on is very bizarre as well. And I mean, I like that. It didn't. This wasn't as sci-fi as you thought you would think it would be. I mean, there's some sci-fi books that are really out in outer space, and this is not. This is just very on Earth, you know and understand, where cops are telepaths. Therefore, murder doesn't happen anymore because you instantly get caught because telepaths. And yeah, this like fantastic. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I'm glad it won the first Hugo Award. It's nice, and I would suggest it. So 220 pages. The pacing's really good. Alfred Bester's The Demolished Man. Great kind of crime sci-fi drama about a guy dealing with the strain and guilt of a crime that he has committed, and then kind of what happens there, like, and how many people kind of fall in his wake, and kind of how things fall apart for him, or how sometimes he succeeds. It's a good deal. It's a good deal. I love the cop character. I mean, I like the bad guy too, but like I like the cop as well. Yeah, it was fun. It was a good book. It's a good book. All right. So when we come back for next week, we will be dealing with, what are we dealing with? I have a pile. I don't have a particular order, but I think we might be dealing with one of the winners from 1993. I will see you guys for that, and you take care. Bye, everybody.